Hi everyone. I am creating what I hope to be is a very quick and comprehensive little video to show you what I mean about displaying principles of design when it comes to location photos. So I provide to you this PDF, but I just want to go over it real quickly. So the principles of design are balance, emphasis, movement, pattern, repetition, proportion, rhythm, variety, and unity. So when it comes to balance, it talks about visual weight. And this can be when it comes to objects, colors, textures, space, scale. Things can be symmetrically balanced, visually weighted, both on the same side, or it can be asymmetrical balance. And hopefully I'll show you some examples with some photos that I have. Emphasis is basically when you look at something for your very first time, where do your eyes go automatically? Right off the bat, what is the first thing that you see about that photo, about that image? That is the emphasis. It can be a crowd of people all wearing black and one person is wearing blue. That would be the emphasis because your eye goes to the one thing that's kind of out of place. Whether it's color, whether it's larger and everything around it is small, it can be a different texture. Um, so just think about like where does your eye go first? Movement is also a very important one. It's the path that your viewer's eye takes when looking around your film screen around your photo. And with movement usually comes line, which is a formal element. So lines can create a directional movement. Kind of think of like atmospheric perspective with lines going to one point and leading your eyes. This can be a good example of taking a picture of a walkway or of a road that kind of curves off into the distance. The lines of the side of the road, or maybe the dotted line down the center, kind of creates this line movement and takes your eye into the image or into the frame still. Pattern. Now, there is a difference between pattern and repetition. Students usually try and use these words together as one and say that there's a repeating pattern. Now, it is possible to have a repeating pattern, but not every pattern is a repeating pattern. So, a pattern is, let's say you have black, white, black, white, black, white, or a bunch of circles, things like that. Repetition is, it kind of, as the definition says, it works with pattern, but it can also stand alone. So you can have a repetition of the shape of a circle. Like you can have 12 or 13 bouncy balls, but they're all different colors and all different shapes. So obviously it's not going to be a pattern, but you do have a repetition of the shape of a circle, of the repetition of the balls. So you can have that. You can also have a repetition of bricks when it comes to fireplaces or the outside of homes. Proportion. This kind of goes hand in hand with both unity and variety. It also has to do with sizes and amounts. Um, it's kind of like does the proportion of the object of the space kind of make sense? I don't know if all of you are familiar with Michelangelo's David, the large sculpture. Well, if you actually look at it, his hands and his feet are huge. They are completely out of proportion with the rest of his body. They are really big. But why did Michelangelo do that? Because if you take a look at the sculpture, it doesn't look like anything's wrong with it. And that's because Michelangelo knew that his David sculpture was going to be placed on a very high pedestal. And when things are up high up the ground and you as a viewer are looking up at it, you need to have the feet and the hands larger in order for it to actually look in proportion. So sometimes you kind of need to play with the size of objects for them to look like they're in proportion. For example, in Lord of the Rings, there were dwarves. There were talents there dressed as dwarves that had to look shorter than other characters. For example, Gimli had to look shorter than Legolas. Well, kind of had to think about, well, how do they actually deal with that proportional difference? So that's what it's asking when it comes to proportion. And then rhythm is kind of like it creates this overall feeling of being organized and this overall feeling of movement. If I were to pull up a good example, I would say Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night has a really good feel of rhythm. Everything is swirly and you have the continuous dashes of color. Variety and unity are also two terms that a lot of students try and kind of interchange, but variety and unity is kind of self explanatory. Variety, there are several elements that kind of hold your attention, so there may not be one clear emphasis. Unity is kind of like everything's in harmony. So unity does kind of work at the same time as rhythm. Everything is kind of together. So that being said, I took some photos of an inside of a house. Let's take a look. Oops. There we go. Let me move this out of the way. So this is obviously a staircase, right? But I did not take this photo straight up the stairs. I mean, I really thought about my composition and the viewfinder of my camera. I moved and I tilted the camera and I pulled in and I pulled back to cut out as much as the background on the wall behind the staircase as I could, and to try and really turn my angle just so that you have this beautiful use of leading line movement. So I have a line right here. I have a line right here that goes up right here. So my viewer, your eyes goes into the image, your eye goes into the image, right? And then I have a repetition of lines. I have a repetition of the staircase railings. I also have a repetition of the stairs. So this image has a great use of movement and repetition. And ideally, I would have taken off this pink ribbon that's right here. This could be used as emphasis because really it's the odd color out, and a picture full of browns and off-whites. This little pink thing just really does not belong there. So if this is intentional to your image, then this would probably be the emphasis. If it's not, then it kind of messes up the overall rhythm of the scene, because this right here is the oddball out. But this aside, this is a really good example of showing me movement and repetition. So let's show another image. Woo! All right, this is a pillow. But you know what? This is a really good example of using both pattern and repetition at the same time. Because look, I have square, or rather, I have diamond, circle, diamond, circle, diamond, circle. This is a repeating pattern of diamond, circle, all the way through. And it's a pattern of the colors of the pillow. Look at this. Circle, 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 circle. Look how many circles, overall circles there are. Yeah. So look at your pillows, your curtains, your bed sheets. If you happen to be looking for things to shoot inside a home, because you will look at things completely different than you used to. All right, let's look at one more. All right. So here again is an image from that staircase. This is actually a design on the side of the staircase. But looking at this and then looking at this PDF, I mean, right away, what do you think that there is? Okay, is there balance? Well, let's look at this. Well, if I were to draw a line, right down here, or right over here, is this evenly balanced? Well, yeah, I mean, you could say it is. Because even though there's a negative space over here, yeah, see, I'm using a formal element term, the white would be a negative space, the brown wood would be a positive space. Even though there's negative space over here, it does link up to the positive space over here. But I don't really know if this would be considered a true balance. I'd probably say this was asymmetrical because when it comes to proportion and weight, I would say that the wood would overpower the negative space. Okay, emphasis. Well, yes, there is definitely emphasis here, right? Your eye goes right here to the middle of the spiral. Okay, movement. Well, yes, there is movement. Your eye goes all the way in here and it wraps around to the center. Or it can start up here and then go all the way from the center. And your eye keeps moving because it spirals back out. This is a great example of movement because your eye just does not stop. Okay? Let's try another image. Okay, so here's that brick that I was telling you. Here you have repetition, but you don't have pattern. Okay? You have repetition of bricks. Brick, 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 brick. And here's another example, kind of like I showed you with the staircase. I really moved around. I moved my body to the right. I moved my camera to the left. Okay? To really get this angle of the shot, I really paid attention to my composition because I wanted to position myself in a way that not only did I get repetition, but I also got movement, right? Do you guys see that? Look, I took advantage of the cement to create leading lines with my brick, right? So your eye might start here and it goes all the way in, here, all the way in, here, all the way in, and so forth, right? So here you have repetition and movement. So what you might think is just a typical fireplace or a brick wall, if you move your body the right way, then it can really become something special. Now, what I do not want to see, guys, is a shot like this. Okay? For one, it's out of focus. Okay? So right there, you would lose points. And then, what in the world are you trying to show me? Okay? So, if you were to submit something like this to me, and you would lose points, and you come back and try and say, well, the emphasis was supposed to be the bookcases, and I was using the repetition of the blinds in the background. No, you weren't. What you actually have here is a hot mess, not something that is really trying to show me principles of design. Because what in the world are you actually wanting me to look at? Okay, so if you actually wanted the bookcases to be the emphasis, then you should not have captured this desk here, because this yellow chair and this yellow table is actually the emphasis of this image. And if you were not really intending to have that be the emphasis, then you should have moved your body in a way that this was not in the scene. or that this was not the main focal point. Okay, so this is an example of how close-up images, when you're trying to show principles of design, will actually be more beneficial to you than giving me a wide shot that is also out of focus. You really want to make sure, to the best of your ability, that your images are crisp and that I actually know what you are trying to show me. I mean, my eyes are going everywhere in this image. I'm jumping to the chair, to the yellow chair, to this black stool, to the bookcase, to this bookcase, to the photo on the wall, and then my eyes being drawn over here to the bright blown out window, to the blinds, to the carpet, back to the chair, to the bookcase, back to the chair, to this red box over here, back to the chair. Now, if you come back and tell me, well, there was product placement in the shot and you were trying to blur it. For example, this case right here, I know that this is actually a box that features a children's show called Paw Patrol, right? Well, I know that, but I didn't want any product placement in my shots, so I purposefully blurred the entire photo in order to blur the box. Well, okay, that's good in theory, but I do allow you guys to put your images into Photoshop or Lightroom, to change things such as your white balance and highlights and shadows. Not to go all out and add filters and make everything sparkly and pretty, but you could take this photo nice and clean, take it into Photoshop or Lightroom, and then just blur this one specific part of the image to let me know that you understand that, oops, you have product placements that maybe you weren't able to move during the shoot because maybe it wasn't your home, okay? Or maybe you just didn't notice it until afterwards when you're looking at your images. You would go in and you could just blur that one box. So maybe at first glance, someone doesn't know that this is actually a children's cartoon logo. Yeah? So, for example, if you were to take an image similar to this, and what you were really trying to capture were these blinds as another use of repetition, right? This is what I would actually be expecting from you. See how I moved in a lot closer? Okay? So right here, again, you have the use of repetition with the blinds. I also kind of moved the blinds a little bit and kind of used my own artistic input. So when I did take this photo, the blinds were moving. So I did create this small sense of movement, because some of these lines do kind of disappear down here at the bottom, and it's not all static straight. So those are some examples of how you can manipulate an interior location in order to demonstrate the principles of design.